Hello everyone, I'm Drunvalo Melchizedek. Today we are going to introduce a new school of teaching released through me last year in 2011 called Awakening the Illuminated Heart. But I'm also here to explain the nature of this new work and further to explain why this teaching is on Earth at this moment in time in 2012. To explain this, we're going to talk about Ascension and how one achieves this higher state of consciousness and the changes the world has gone through over the last 20 years. We are not who we were 20 years ago, and now consciousness levels are possible that were not possible only a short time ago. We are truly in place for the planetary ascension to begin. Are you ready to be born into a completely new world and a new life? With December 21st, 2012, only a few months away, preparing for ascension is in the hearts of millions of people. So let's begin with what the indigenous prophecies say around the world and what they believe is going to happen. To give you a sneak peek, close your eyes and imagine the following actually happening to you sometime in the near future. You are home waiting for dinner. The time is now, the eternal present. Literally, any minute, according to the Mayan prophecy, changes could begin that are irreversible within you and all around you. You're thinking about something that happened earlier that day. When your perception of the reality begins to alter, you feel funny, and you wonder what is happening to you. Your breathing changes, and your senses open wide. Then the walls begin to become transparent, and you can see through to the other side. A strange feeling begins at your third eye, and suddenly you remember. It's like a veil is lifted. An ancient feeling moves through your body, and you can hardly believe it, but you know deep inside your heart what is about to happen. You have done this many times before. You remember. You are moving from one world to another. Yes, you know exactly what to do. You've been born as a baby before. You center yourself in your heart and then go deeper and find the sacred space of the heart. And then you go deeper still to find the tiny space in your heart, the source of creation. Here there is only peace. And also here you can feel your mother breathing. Now the outer world has disappeared, but you can feel your body. You are standing or maybe floating in a strange new world, and yet you know you are still on Mother Earth. You look around you, and your Merkaba, your light body, is rotating near the speed of light, and the beautiful gold color is so familiar. Yes, you remember. You know and can feel that you are changing with each breath. How did this happen? Why is this happening? Wow, earlier this morning you were shopping for food and everything was normal. Planetary ascension begins when you find yourself in the special moments at the end or beginning of a new cosmic cycle, such as the one we are approaching on December 21st, 2012. There is always a window of time, a few years before or after the precise time of the event when the shift in consciousness actually happens. So all we can do now is wait until the energy of the change begins. But once it begins, there is no turning back. It is before this moment, now, when you need to prepare within. Life always gives you what you need, and this time is no different. Before you is everything you need to remember the secrets of your heart, the breath of life, and your light body, the Merkaba. These are the elements that give you the ability to move from one world to another. The ancient ones, your ancestors, truly will be taking each step with you as you enter the birth canal. For as you discover a new way to live, so will they. It has always been this way, and in the future you will meet many of your ancestors face to face. The Ascended Masters do have much to tell you, you who will be awakening into a world that comes from the dreams of your heart. We will begin by discussing your light body, often called in ancient times your Merkaba, and the recent history around how the earth received this ancient knowledge. This history of the last 30 years will explain and describe many of the positive and negative aspects of learning the Merkaba. You really do need to understand what is about to be discussed, for to learn the wrong Merkaba could be spiritually fatal. In the world there is a great deal of misunderstanding and misinformation on this subject. Hopefully what we say here will assist you in making the right decision. Even if you are meditating with the Merkaba now, this information could bring your understanding into a better balance and clarity. Merkaba is a word that has many different pronunciations, but always a similar meaning. In Egyptian, Mer means a counter-rotating field of light, Ka means spirit, and Ba means the physical body. So combining these meanings to its full meaning, Merkaba in Egyptian means a counter-rotating field of light that will transport a person, their body, and their spirit from one world to another. In Hebrew, Merkaba, pronounced Merkaba or Merkaba, has two meanings. One, it means a chariot or a vehicle, and the second one, the throne of God. In December of 1984, I was asked by the Ascended Masters to release the information to the world of the human light body, or the Merkaba. We released not only the mathematical and geometrical knowledge of the Merkaba, but also the knowledge that has been developed over billions of years of how to actually activate the living Merkaba around the human body. This was the first time in about 13,000 years that mankind as a whole has retrieved one of the parts of the essential knowledge necessary to ascend to higher levels of consciousness. Without this knowledge, ascension is nearly impossible. So much has happened since that time that the Ascended Masters now would like to clarify what has happened since that historical moment in 1984, the changes that this knowledge has gone through since then, and finally, where this is leading in the future. If ascension is your focus in life, then what is about to be said may be extremely important to you, especially if you think that you understand the Merkaba and are prepared. But if you have never heard the word Merkaba before, then you are in the right place at the right time. The Merkaba is just the beginning in the mapping of human consciousness. There is so much more that must be understood and mastered if you are to ascend. You cannot ascend with the knowledge of the Merkaba alone. So what is the Merkaba in the real scientific world? First of all, understand that the Merkaba is a function of the brain and is generated by the brain. When we speak about the counter-rotating field, it is the male left brain that is rotating to the left and the female right brain that is rotating to the right. The brain emits an electromagnetic field that surrounds the entire human body and contains it. This field sits at about 4 degrees Kelvin in temperature, or about 4 degrees above absolute zero. It is a very weak field on energy levels, but an awesomely powerful field in its potential in human consciousness. This energy field around the body is geometrical in nature and is contained in a sphere about 55 to 60 feet in diameter, centered for all practical purposes at the base of the spine. It is slightly off of that location to the exact point where your original 8 cells are located, perhaps a quarter of an inch away. The proportions of this spherical field are related to your height, so the taller you are, the bigger your sphere. Thousands of geometrical relationships exist within this sphere, including the 5 Platonic solids and many other polyhedron. And each of these geometrical relationships are further contained within the center of a torus. The toruses in the human light body are like onion rings, rings within rings. It is a combination of these geometrical energy fields and the vast number of ways of connecting them together that creates all the possible Merkaba fields around the body. There have been discovered over billions of years a little over 100,000 completely different Merkabas that are possible. There are also about 250,000 more that are known but have been proven to be unstable under certain conditions. They cannot be used for any reason, as the person using these particular Merkabas will discover they will malfunction over time and simply cannot be relied upon, putting the person in an array of disastrous conditions. Over time, entire planets, thousands of them, have died from using some of these unstable Merkabas. So it is enormously important to know which ones are stable and which ones are not. For this reason, life in this one universe has spent more time and energy studying Merkaba science than any other subject. It is the subject of how consciousness evolves. Each possible Merkaba allows the person within the field to experience the one universe in a new and unique manner. Yes, there is only one universe, but it can only be experienced safely in about 100,000 primary ways. This means that there are about 100,000 entirely different levels of consciousness so far discovered in the universe. The exact number right now is very close to 100,200. Further, each of these levels contain a vast number of possible geometrical expressions of life. Just as on Earth there is human consciousness that surrounds itself with a particular Merkaba, but there are known at least 30 million other species of life that were generated from within that specific Merkaba. This is true in each of the 100,000 possible Merkabas, and so life is dramatically complicated, but on a sacred geometrical level, life is amazingly simple. Humankind thinks of itself as the greatest life form on Earth, but in the one universe, humankind is near the bottom of the barrel in possible consciousness levels. Out of 100,000 possible levels, humans are in level 2. We are just a baby in what is possible, and that's beautiful. But babies should not try to drive semi-trucks, or in other words, we should move up the evolutionary ladder one step at a time. Have patience. We will eventually get to every single level as we mature as a spirit. Closely surrounding the human body is a geometrical field called a star tetrahedron, which is also contained in a sphere. Leonardo da Vinci was one of the first people in recent times that exposed this energy field and delineated the human body within it. It is with this star tetrahedral field that humankind has been first working with the Merkaba. Shamans and medicine men and women around the world for thousands of years have found that they have been able to use this star tetrahedron to create the first 2 Merkaba levels of possible human consciousness. The first possible Merkaba is simply rotating the top, male tetrahedron counterclockwise and the bottom, female tetrahedron clockwise at specific ratios. These ratios are always contained within the Fibonacci sequence and have never been associated with any other sequence. If anyone tells you they know a Merkaba based upon a different ratio than Fibonacci, be careful. You can understand why this is true with a study of the golden mean. The golden mean is the primary proportion and structure of the one universe, and the Fibonacci sequence approximates the golden mean, allowing life to exist. All living Merkabas are based upon the Fibonacci sequence, with no exceptions whatsoever. It's just the way it is. People using other Merkabas functioning on other ratios are simply in fantasy, and there is nothing around their body but imagination. When humankind first discovered the first Merkaba, it allowed them to experience the fourth dimension, but only in a limited way. It did not allow them to live in the fourth dimension, but only visit it for short periods of time. But to the human world, when someone disappears before your eyes, it seems like magic, and that shaman became an important person in the eyes of the ancient world. Slowly others learned the second Merkaba. The second Merkaba, called the tetrahedral Merkaba, one that the Ascended Masters first introduced to the world in 1984, this one is different than the first Merkaba in that it requires the person to know that there are really 3 star tetrahedral sets, top and bottom, and yet the person can only psychically or scientifically see 1 star tetrahedron. There are 3 completely different star tetrahedrons, but they are exactly the same size and on the same axis, so they look like one set. In order to activate the tetrahedral Merkaba, the person must spin 1 set of the star tetrahedrons to the left, counterclockwise, spin 1 set of the star tetrahedrons to the right, clockwise, and 1 set of the star tetrahedrons remain motionless. The set that moves counterclockwise is male, electrical in nature, and is connected to the left brain. The set that moves clockwise is female, magnetic in nature, and is connected to the right brain. The set that does not move at all and remains stationary is neutral and is connected to the physical body. It is this tri-tetrahedral Merkaba that was first introduced to the world for reasons that I have never really made clear except in a few small ways. I'll do my best now to explain. The Merkaba is necessary for humans to rise to a higher level of consciousness, and we can see that there are levels of consciousness. Just look into nature and you will see that you consider yourself above most other life forms here on Earth. And yes, most people believe that we are the highest, but there are a few that do exceed us. But you don't really think that you are the highest life form within the one universe, do you? Humanity is on a consciousness journey. Really, we are just beginning. But without the Merkaba, we will go nowhere and remain in polarity consciousness. There is a clear reason why the tetrahedral Merkaba was introduced to humanity and not some other possible Merkaba. Mother Earth is functioning through a tetrahedral Merkaba herself, and we, as her children, must be in perfect resonance with her in order to ascend. For it is Mother Earth herself, with Father Sun, who will be leading this planetary ascension. Richard Hoagland, who works with NASA, discovered that Mother Earth, Mars, and probably all of the planets that are functioning through the tetrahedral Merkaba. He also discovered the sun itself has a tetrahedral Merkaba. When you take a sphere, such as the Earth or the Sun, or place a star tetrahedron inside the sphere, all of the points of the tetrahedron will exactly touch the surface of the sphere. The top flat surface of the female tetrahedron and the bottom surface of the male tetrahedron will precisely cross the sphere at the 19.5 north and south latitudes. When you take a sphere, such as the Earth or the Sun, and place a star tetrahedron inside the sphere, all of the points of the tetrahedron will exactly touch the surface of the sphere. The top flat surface of the female tetrahedron and the bottom surface of the male tetrahedron will precisely cross the sphere at the 19.5 north and south latitudes. Look at the photo of our sun as the sunspots ring the surface at the 19.5 north and south latitudes, revealing its inner tetrahedrons. Our whole solar system is a tetrahedral Merkaba, and we humans are on this level of consciousness ourselves because the solar system is. So this is where we will begin. A person using any other form of Merkaba will be out of phase with the solar system and will not be able to move with the rest of the people in the ascension process. They simply will be on the wrong frequency and will never be able to match the waveform of the new reality. It's just the way it is. They will not be allowed to follow Mother Earth in her ascension, but they will not be really harmed, and through a long process they will someday catch up with humanity that will exist then on a higher level of consciousness. Once Mother Earth reaches the fourth dimension, she will almost for certain change her tetrahedral Merkaba to a new and different one to match the consciousness that she will then be on. And you, as her child, will also naturally change your Merkaba to whatever she is using. You will not even have to think about it, for it will happen as naturally as breathing. Even though the Ascended Masters are the highest levels of consciousness within humankind, they still make mistakes. In 1980, the Ascended Masters decided to release the knowledge of Ascension to the world. There has been a blueprint that has been used for millions of years, and even on Earth, it was this blueprint that had always been used. And so they began with this means of teaching the ascension process. They gave this blueprint to 4 females around the world, and in this ascension process, the work began with the human heart, not the Merkaba. After a student found their way into the sacred space of the heart, and then into the tiny space of the heart, the source of creation, they were kept in this space until it became normal for them. Then there were intricate connections that were made between the brain and the heart until the third eye was open, and while it was open, the tetrahedral Merkaba was activated automatically and naturally by breathing. This has always been the simplest way to achieve fourth-dimensional consciousness the one universe has ever known. But because mankind has fallen from higher consciousness in the last days of Atlantis into polarity consciousness, and because we were slowly becoming a male planet, by the 20th century we were almost completely male or left-brained in the way that we thought and acted. When the Ascended Masters released this knowledge of ascension in the normal way in 1980, almost no one came to the workshops except females. The ratio was actually about 100 to 1. The males and the females who thought like males did not believe or know or feel the subtle energies that were associated with the heart. This kind of information seemed like fantasy and not real, and the men just simply wouldn't come to the workshops. The Ascended Masters waited for about 4 years and then realized that the men were never going to come and something had to be done, and they made a decision that had seldom been used before and never been used before on Earth. In 1984, they talked with me and asked me to present to you the knowledge of ascension, but in reverse. I was to begin with the tetrahedral Merkaba and end with the tiny space of the heart. The reason they began with the Merkaba instead of the heart was because it was logical, geometrical, mathematical, and they believed it would attract the male mind. And it did. The ratio in my workshops reached about 60% female, 40% male from the very beginning. It originally looked like it would work, but slowly it was realized that there was a huge problem. The human ego was still alive and strong when it activated the Merkaba in this way, whereas in the heart-based Merkaba, the ego was subdued by the heart and not allowed to make decisions on its own. The ego is polarized, and every decision it makes is polarized. The heart is not polarized, but has a unity consciousness and a wisdom that is as old as the one universe, and maybe older. This translated into people who entered their Merkaba with their ego in charge, who then began to change the teachings into whatever the ego decided was interesting. The ego has almost no wisdom, and had no idea what it actually meant to human consciousness when it changed the Merkaba into other forms and possibilities. Since the ego was making changes to the Merkaba without any real knowledge, it resulted in a catastrophe for many people. One of these egos, or people, changed the Merkaba in ways that resulted in people losing their connection to the third dimension, and over 200 people were forced to enter into insane asylums. Other egos began to change the speed ratios out of pure ignorance, and also reversed the field so that it rotated in the opposite direction. This is an anti-life field, and those people are slowly going to get weaker and weaker until they will not be able to enter the ascension process. It is an inevitable part of nature. It's like the Romans eating with lead plates and utensils. They didn't know, and so they slowly died. Still other egos began to change the shape and form of the Merkaba, having no idea what they were doing, which will result in all of those people not being able to enter the ascension process because they are not in resonance with Mother Earth and Father Sun. The ascended masters must have known this, but because of our unnatural male pathway we had chosen, they had no choice. They had to accept these casualties in order to get the masses to achieve ascension, or all of humanity would become extinct. I am certain their hearts must feel sadness to have to accept this loss, but on the other hand, humanity was saved because of this decision, and those people actually are not really lost. They will be fine over time. Finally, after 25 years of teaching the ascension process in reverse order with all of its problems, what has happened, because of people living in their Merkaba and their hearts, is the human race has slowly risen in consciousness to a new level which was reached in 2010, where it can now accept and understand the subtle energies of the heart. The Ascended Masters contacted me in 2010 and asked me to prepare to teach this ascension process in the original way, beginning with the heart and ending with the tetrahedral Merkaba. I was excited and happy for this to happen. It's important to understand that this way of teaching is natural, and the tetrahedral Merkaba that comes from this method is also natural and not synthetic, as was the case when the Flower of Life taught this part of the work. When the Merkaba is taught first, as in the old method, the heart and brain are not connected, and the Merkaba must be activated manually and synthetically. It then takes about 2 years for the Merkaba to become stable and permanent. Once it becomes permanent, the Merkaba field will eventually turn into a natural Merkaba field, but it takes a long time. But when the Merkaba is learned in the natural way, the heart is in control, and it is fully connected to the brain, and at the right moment the living tetrahedral Merkaba automatically activates on its own through their breath. It does not have to wait 2 years to become permanent, but it is permanent immediately, and its appearance is different. Instead of multicolors as seen in almost all synthetic Merkabas, the natural Merkaba looks like it is made of gold. It also is so smooth, and it is easy for most people to feel the difference. But it is not the Merkaba that is important here. It is the sacred space of the heart. The Merkaba was always the least important part of the human consciousness, but no one understood. So many thought it was everything and the most important discovery in history. But as time will show, the heart is the source of creation and will always be the center of all levels of creation. So let's discuss the heart and its part in creation. Let's understand why the heart is more primal and closer to the source of life than the brain. Sounds funny, but it's true. In the first 2 books of The Ancient Secret of the Flower of Life, we talked about human conception. We showed how life began as a sphere, the ovum, the human egg, the human female egg. It then divided into 2 through mitosis. It then divided into 4 and took the shape of a tetrahedron. It then divided into 8 and took the shape of a star tetrahedron. We showed how it continued to divide until it reached 512 cells, where it became a hollow torus. But in the book, we stopped there. Many years later, while I was teaching in Germany, a medical doctor stood up and told me some pretty interesting information. That 512-cell torus continued to grow and becomes literally the human heart. So there was a time when you were in your mother's womb where you were a heart and nothing more. You had no arms or legs or liver and definitely no skull and brain, and yet your one heart began to beat. No one knew for hundreds of years how the heart was able to beat on its own without a brain, but it did. Then recently at Stanford in California, they discovered that the heart has a brain within itself. It is very small, only 40,000 cells, but they are brain cells, not heart cells. Then it was discovered that the entire body came physically out of the heart. The very first part of the body to come out of the heart was the tip of the tongue, which is no surprise for those that practice Kundalini or Kriya Yoga. There is a direct connection between the heart and the tip of the tongue. Following behind the tip of the tongue were the arms and legs and the rest of the body, including the brain. This intuitively shows you that the heart is older and more primal than the brain, and what has been found over the last 6,000 years is that the heart is the source of the creation process, though I admit that it has been kept very secret throughout the ages. What is talked about in one of the ancient books of the Hindu, the Upanishad, which is about 5,000 to 6,000 years old, and the Sanskrit Vedas, perhaps older, is the discovery that creation itself came out of a tiny space within the physical heart. In our work in modern times, we have confirmed that this is true. And actually, at this point, we have mapped human consciousness inside and around the human body, from the tiny space of the heart, through the tip of the tongue, to a specific gland in the brain, to the openings of the third eye, to 8 beams of light that come out of the pineal gland, to a sphere around those beams, to the Merkaba, and from there to the outer reality. This is all amazing. Humans can change the outer reality by meditation, and we teach this aspect of consciousness not to create something in your outer reality which the ego will just thrive on, but to understand the process. You must know the creation process if you are able to survive in the 4th dimension. Why? Once you experience yourself entering this new world, the 4th dimension, you will be confronted with something that is normally outside of human experience. And that is, you will rapidly discover that you are creating every single thing you are experiencing, the entire world that you find yourself in. But at first you don't realize this. All you know is that this world you are in is constantly changing, and it normally brings up fear. You don't understand what is happening to you. This is why babies cry when they are born on earth, because they go into fear. If fear raises its head without realizing it, you begin to create a world of fear, and very soon you will create something that will force you to die in that world, and you will be returned to this earth on the 3rd dimension. Jesus said it perfectly, "Many are called, but few are chosen." So in order to remain in this higher consciousness level of consciousness, you need to know that you are creating everything you see, and you need to know exactly how the creation process works so that you can apply it in this situation. For example, if you stay in love, harmony, and peace, then you will create a world of love, harmony, and peace, and you will be able to be stable and able to survive in this new world. All this happens in the first 15 minutes after arrival in the 4th dimension. But once you are stable, you can remain there and begin to live and breathe a new, higher form of consciousness. You are now a baby in a new world, and yes, you have parents there to take care of you. But within this new world, life is so much easier and satisfying. You do not die ever again, meaning that your memories remain intact even if you decide to change bodies. There is no more sickness. You can have anything you want. Remember, you are creating everything. Knowledge pours into your awareness until the point is reached where you truly understand the one universe. And in this new world, your body, which appears exactly like it does here on Earth, begins to transform. You grow much taller. Females are about 10 to 12 feet high, and males are about 14 to 16 feet high. And both of them have brains about 3 times as large as human brains. And this brings you to the moment where you are then able to move on to the next dimension, the 5th dimension. We have an exciting future ahead of us, as this is only the beginning. So if you wish to experience directly what I am speaking about, this new workshop that the Ascended Masters have asked me to present is now available to you. I believe that this new workshop will change the way you perceive the reality, what you think nature is, who you think you are, and eventually reveal to you why you are on Earth and allow you to ascend in the next world with ease. This new teaching is called Awakening the Illuminated Heart. There are now certified teachers from all over the world beginning to teach this new work. If you would like to experience this, please go to www.drunvalo.net and look under the School of Remembering. May this knowledge be a blessing in your life, and may you remember your intimate connection to the source of life. From my heart, Drunvalo Melchizedek.